He said. This probably can't be a meeting the other night. I mean, so. I sent it to you and Beth.
6 and 7. I'm
That's
like,
what I would take away.
Right, the meeting at 6,
Thank
and
you.
then the 7
I
o'clock.
was just gonna say, that's,
Yeah,
gonna be a
I think it
valuable.
would have been nice just for you
And
to
then we're
say, go to the
Get the word
dialogue.
out too.
The outcome, I'm sure would have been the same.
For like neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
so,
Campaigns.
It's real good.
And,
yeah, well,
yeah,
it's,
so,
I,
we can.
That's
talk like-
That's excellent.
Oh,
maybe, I don't know.
oh, yeah. Oh, yes. And I don't really know. Besides, one year. I did good day. How's it going?
Or TV stations.
That we had somebody who wrote a share. They're sort of trying to put it down with a front end loader. And but that.
Closer to the.
And then I get it so jammed in there that the countries, you can't go. You can't unload it. Except. Well, so this, in first study, it's a boy, I think. And I think when the revenue is ADA, I think we should look at that, especially with the height thing.
Yeah.
And say, let's do the add on that top piece, because otherwise.
Yeah.
I don't think it's three bolts or whatever, it's holding that railing in place. People leaning on it.
Yeah, and then,
Big one.
and then not like leaning over too low.
Freaking
I
out
mean,
back.
because of people. Yeah.
So.
So.
Fit in drawing.
Oh, what's this all this? I got
Bring it up and see if we can like.
Oh, no,
Yeah, we haven't heard anybody's not.
As far as I know.
Somebody else is coming in now, so maybe that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. There's.
Awesome.
And there he is. We were all waiting with bated breath. That could be good.
Thanks.
We're doing this all right here. I just didn't know what the people are.
Well, I figured I would try to eliminate the house.
Okay, thank you, everybody. My clock's showing 6:01, so I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Georgetown to order. It is Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023, and let's go ahead and start with the agenda.
Say it's so. And two.
Next, I will call roll. I'm Lynette Kelsey, Police Judge. Rob Connell.
Here.
Deanne Powell.
Here.
John Jennings.
Here.
Wayne Kaczynski.
Here.
Mary Smith.
Here.
And Rich Darrow.
Here.
Yeah. Agenda approval. Anything that we need to add or delete from the agenda tonight?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda dated May 23rd, 2023. Second.
The moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The opposed. Motion passes. Audience business. Members of the audience have 5 minutes to present any matter of interest not already on the agenda. Do we have anyone here for audience business? Anybody online? No. Okay. Seeing none, we will move on. Next, we have the payables. These are dated from April 28th through May 27th, 2023. Any questions or comments on the table?
I'll make a motion to approve the payables from 4/28, 2023 to 5/18, 2023. I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the payables. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, motion passes. Next, we have the minutes from our last meeting, which was on May 9th, 2023. I had given some correction to Jen. So, and she did those and emailed them to you. And if you didn't get those, it was a change in the date. And under the mayors and commissioners youth award program, there was a reference to next year's budget, and the date was just missing the 2. And then the dinner had been the Sunday before our meeting, and then we just added on page 3, under item 5, the short-term license agreement, we just added a sentence about the current lease for the fire station with the fire authority expires the end of 2024, which coincides with the IGA. So those were the corrections I had. Did anybody have any more?
I'll approve the minutes dated May 9th, 2023 as amended.
Second, John.
Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, first thing on our agenda tonight is planning commission appointments. We have 2 appointments. Jake Cooper and Doug Roskoff would like to be on our planning commission, and they both submitted letters of intent. Are they here in the audience? Jake?
I'm here. Doug's on his way. He doesn't get off work until 6 up at the excellent line. So
Okay,
he asked me to get y'all awake, but I think it was not needed.
okay. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself then?
I'm Jake Cooper. I'm Big One Design Build. I'm a local contractor, build, remodel, all that good stuff. I'm new to Georgetown, not new to Frederick County. My wife Heather, she's been here her whole life. She's the administrator at PCF. not really big on this talk, so I'll cut it short.
Hi, Jay. All right. So since we do not have Doug here,
I'll make a motion to appoint Jake Cooper and Douglas Roscoe to the planning commission.
I'll second.
Wait, at least a second.
I want to have them be voted on separately, please,
All right.
individually.
Is that okay with
I'll
you?
amend my motion to appoint Jake Cooper to the planning commission.
So is that okay with the second?
I think you're gonna second.
I'll second.
Well,
I don't
she's
know how-
amending it, so.
So I'm, you need a second on that.
No, no. It would probably be better if whoever
Start over.
seconded the original would also be okay with the second,
Okay,
to second
yeah, I'll
the
second.
amendment. Okay. So it's been moved and seconded to appoint Jake Cooper to the planning commission. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes.
I'll make a motion to appoint Douglas Roscoe to the planning commission.
I'll second that one.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to appoint Douglas Roscoe to the planning commission. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay,
He couldn't be here. I don't know who he is.
okay, motion passed. Next, we have a public hearing. This is a short-term rental appeal by John Weeks. You want to intro? Okay. This is a public hearing, so I'm going to call us to order as the Board of Appeals. Yep. It is 6:09 p.m. And I don't know if it's on, but yeah, okay. Let me just go through some procedure first, just so everybody knows how this is gonna run. First, we're gonna have presentation by the appellant. Questions by the board will come next, then presentation by town staff, then questions by the board, then response, if any, from the appellant, then final questions by the board. Then I will close the hearing and then board deliberation and action will take place. Okay? All right, so go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, Cindy, what you stand up and read this, pretty helpful story. Thank you. My name is John Weeks. This is my wife, Cindy. We have been owners here for just about 10 years now. So this is kind of a second home for us. We want you guys to be aware of this. It is our second home.
State the address if you would.
Okay, the address is 1890 Argentine Unit D102.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so, look, obviously, we applied for this a long time ago. We applied for this, I believe it was 7 years ago. I'm not exactly sure. It was 2015. Possibly.
You've been on the wait list for a while.
Quite a long time. So, long story short, we got notification from the town that we had finally gotten to our place in the queue where we could apply for a short-term license and start exercising that particular activity on the condo. We were thrilled because that's actually part of our long-term plan. We're going to be spending a lot of time up here in the winter. Okay, so we spend a lot of time up here in the winter anyway. So, we're pretty big skiers and like skiing a lot, which is really good since that we are here. So long story short, we were thrilled. It's an awesome thing, part of the plan. Everything is working out, coming together. A couple of weeks later, we get the notification from them. We're so sorry, we can't do it. We're already maxed out on the building. We only allow two units on short-term rental per building. So we were obviously very unhappy with this. This was a blow to us, because again, on the long-term planning thing, this was how we're gonna offset the cost. We don't own the place outright, we're rich, we didn't buy it cash, we have a mortgage on it, we have cost fees and all that. So we figured the time that we're not there, we could short-term rent it out and at least cover our costs or get our costs back, so we don't have this ongoing monthly obligation during our later years. So it's a pain. But, so that was the idea. So, look, I've read through everything. I've got informal advice on this. I realize by the way the rules are written, it is against the rules, quote unquote. But I was wondering, I have a couple of, I guess, questions on that. First of all, we did post the notice. Did anybody object? Were there any objections received on the notice of this board? No. Okay, well, that's good. Cindy, you want to say something?
Yeah, and just want to make it clear, it's short-term rental, but mainly only for the summer when we're not here. Life changes, we used to come here year round, all the time life changes, a couple of hard things have happened, including our old dog who passed away, who loved to
We
hike.
love that.
So we came up here in the summer and hiked with him, we have a dog now that does not hike at all.
So that was gonna be a. So,
I mean, the place is empty basically from
end of April to end of October,
something like that, where
thereabouts.
last year, I think we came up once or twice
This time.
in the summer. In the winter, we're here every weekend. We know several people in Georgetown, you know, Randy.
No, really, you know, a lot of people.
We
You know,
know-
I know Craig, actually, you know, in Calvin Creek, I play music there, we play music out on the square, the mountain jams.
So we are, and this like is stressing me again, this is really our second home. This is not an investment property. This is our second home. And when we fully retire, we plan to spend the whole winter here, basically. So,
So the question I have to be taken into consideration. You guys decide, it's a valid question, I think it's valid, though. I was wondering, is the town actually maxed out on STRs? Or are there STR licenses that are open in other wards in town besides ours? That's one of the questions I've got, and I don't expect you to answer that right now, but that's just one of the open questions I've got. And what I was thinking, again, you know, this is gonna be a hardship for us. We're gonna have to find another creative way to cover the cost of this place, either a month-to-month rental or something like that. And I'm not really fond of month-to-month rentals because it's harder to keep an eye on the place. You know what I mean, from a practical point of view. So I was wondering if there are any short-term rental opportunities in other wards, is it possible to do a transfer to our ward? Or is it possible to do it like on a 6-month basis out of the year? So we're not already hindering the town of its maximum capacity, which is obviously when the mountains are open and everybody's skiing. That's when it's busy. It's busy in the summer. I love it. I mean, this town is great in the summer. You know, we get to the planet. Obviously, so that's a possibility I was thinking of. We're just trying to think of ways, you know, not to get around it, but to work with you.
creative.
Be creative in order to make this happen, potentially do it for half a year, see if we can potentially aggregate a license to another ward into our ward. And again, it's not a money-making operation for us, you know. We're not against making money, but this is not the goal here. It really is to cover costs. So beyond that, I don't know what else I could add to it. Look, I've read it, I get it, I know towns have to have rules. This is an important thing, but again, just trying to find a way that we can work together. We've been living here and staying here a while. So anyway, that's about all I got. Cindy, is there anything you want to add to it?
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
So, questions from the board, anyone?
I have a question there. So that part there at, an opening actually opened up. But there was no openings at all. Yeah, so it wasn't like a spot for the whole area open up, because I'm a little bit familiar with how it was now. So there's no openings there. Gotcha.
So in the ward itself, there was,
Okay, that's what.
but in the building,
Right.
because of the proximity rules, there was no longer an opening because
So that's kind of where.
Yeah.
Came to play.
that was the snag.
Okay, copy.
Any other questions from the board?
Can I add a question? Well, this bill we reached out, if I can add something in there. If we get it. I don't know when the other short-term licenses went into place, like that. We have no idea. We just, whether it was before, after, I don't think it's important, but it's after we bought, but I don't know in terms of when we applied.
They've been they've had short-term rentals since like the beginning of the program, which started in 2016. They were one of the first people.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, but obviously we weren't as quick on the draw, but our goal again is not to make a buck. It was, you know, again, it was trying to fit into the longer term plans. Anyway, that's all I got. Thank you.
Anybody else have questions for them?
I guess I have a question, and that is the proximity is, that rule is in place because of short-term rentals, the parking, the number of folks that come in and out and all that, that's why that rule is in place, correct?
Density of a neighborhood type thing and community feel.
So, anyone else have questions for them? Okay,
Well, I happen to know the situation, if this doesn't pan out for you. If you like to ski, I've got some friends of mine that have a property that's similar, you know, same building. And they spend their summers in Serbia. And they have no problem finding a renter. In fact, there's actually rap guys, you know, personnel that actually need places to live.
so we're getting off track.
Right, just making a suggestion.
Fine, that's fine, you're fine. So next, no, you are. Okay, next is presentation by town staff.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate you guys here, and I know we spoke on the phone as well. I'm the town administrator, and this one was unfortunate, and so I appreciate your patience, and I appreciate your willingness to be here to communicate to staff. This situation happened because of an error that the town said. In fact, both of these short-term rentals were exactly the same situation. Town staff thought that it was in a different place and assumed, and I know what happens when you assume, it's not good. It wasn't checked in the beginning, it just was assumed. And by the time when the application was submitted, in both situations, it was an error. It was not located where our staff thought it was. And by the time that I looked at it, it was clearly in the wrong place. We had maxed out our limits in that place. So unfortunately, the application was denied from the very beginning. It never got approved. On the phone, the applicant did share to me another question that you didn't bring up, but I'll bring it up, of just the system feels a little unfair. And how the way that it's set up is set up for someone who's been here for a long time and it never has another chance. And those around never have a chance getting it if the limits are in close proximity like that. And so he had asked if I would bring it up to see if the Board of Selectmen has any appetite to consider rewording this and changing the system completely to be more equitable system where it becomes like a lottery or something like that, that everybody has a chance. I know that that's not perfect for everyone, but he had mentioned that, and I said I would bring that up.
I'm sorry, but I really appreciate what you were saying here, but I think the overall question for us is, if not now, when? I mean, we're locked out, it seems, at this point in time. I don't know when we get, and I'm no spring chicken, so.
Yeah. So in this part of the hearing, it's the town staff's turn to speak, and so
I'm sorry,
we actually closed your part.
I apologize.
But that's okay.
You'll have an opportunity later
Thank you.
to add. So rather than going back and
I
forth.
appreciate it.
Yeah, but I had heard you, and I want to make sure I brought that up. In this situation, the code is very clear. I cannot bend the rules, or anything like that. And in some ways, I'm kind of glad because it doesn't allow me to show partiality to any person specifically. It's just black and white code says this, and so I had no choice but to deny this. And I appreciate both applicants coming to appeal that because they did have that right in the code. So that's really what it is. It's an unfortunate situation, and I have no other thing to add to that.
Okay. All right, now, questions for staff from the board.
I think I have an appetite for looking at more an equitable solution for this. There's a time that, people would have a rental for.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously didn't fit everybody,
I'd like to have that discussion at some point.
Yeah, I think one thing you need to put is you've got an appeal hearing here, just on this application. And then you've got the question policy wise, if you want to change the rules going forward, if you do, you have to run an ordinance 1 or 2 reading. So I guess I urge you to not mix a later policy discussion in with the appeal from this applicant. They made their appeal and they've heard from the staff, and we'll hear from them again. But then you need to say up or down on what you're going to hold the decision here, and not that that other issue isn't relevant, but it's not something you decide in the middle of an appeal. Is my point.
Okay, any other questions for staff from the board? Okay. Now it can go back to you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm not real good at calling you. But no, I appreciate that. Thank you. And again, my overall overriding thing is we own the place. We would like to exercise our full rights to ownership at some point in time. Right now, I don't see how that can happen, given the way everything is set up at this point in time. But thank you. Do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're not getting younger and, we can't wait another 10
years?
years, 20 years.
The odds could be, yeah.
We'll be in a break.
Thank you.
So final questions from the board for the appellant. Anything? Okay. Then I will close the public hearing. It is 6:24. And it's time for the board to deliberate and take action.
I think the rules are clear.
Unfortunately, yeah, we are stuck with what we have. I mean, the original regulations, when we found that they weren't really working well, lots of concentration of STRs in one block or in one building, the potential was increasing for a pretty drastic change. We also had comment from the HOA at that particular building, and that they weren't in, I can't remember which building it is in the Creek House condos, but they were in one of the buildings, it's not allowed at all, or shouldn't have been allowed. So we had a lot of pushback from the HOA, and that's part of why they were set at the limits that they were set. And there's nothing to prevent us from looking at revisions in the future. We've had several people suggest, so that down the road, that could be an option, but we're faced with what we have right now. So any other comments or statements or questions? Yes, Deanne.
The board came up with the regulations quite some time ago because the town was getting overrun and we were having lots of problems with concentrations in one area and no places to park and odds and ends of things like that. They are very well thought out and done well for the best interests of the town. I realize that your meaning Mr. and Mrs. Weeks, are getting caught in the bind, but I think the rules and regulations are really valid and need to stay in place.
Okay. So, any other comments? Okay, who would like to make a motion?
I'll do that. I move to deny the appeal request to overturn the denial letter for 1890 Argentine Street, D102, to be a short-term rental.
I'll second.
Okay, been moved and seconded. Everybody understands the motion? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. So motion passes. Thank you very much for coming to us and presenting your case.
Can we get back to Jerry's comments and what John and Rob brought up earlier? In the last year and a half or so, we've had 3 or 4 different short-term rental situations come up, either under appeals or questions. And we have talked about reviewing that ordinance and potentially making changes. And I think some valid points have been brought up here, which I agree with John and Rob and perhaps others of you. So I would like to see that we move forward with that. I know it's not going to be next board meeting, but to consider some creative ways to approach this. That might, you know, I believe in our ordinance. I believe in protecting our density. I believe in the numbers that we have committed to. You bring up a good point with the lottery, and I think we should consider that. And I just didn't want them to run away without feeling that we've heard you, I've heard you, I think we all have. But I really think we need to push on that this year to review that ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I just want to say thank you to everybody for taking into consideration.
Okay, next we have another short-term rental appeal by Joy Wilson. Take a look.
So I'm in the same building, I'm in building B.
Oh, wait, let me open the public hearing.
Sorry. Bear my name on my.
Go. It is 6:29. And let me go ahead and read the procedures again, just to refresh. So I'm calling the Board of Appeal to order. You're gonna give your presentation and then there will be questions by the board to you. And then presentation by town staff, then questions by the board again for the town staff, response from you, and then final questions by the board. I will close the hearing and then the board will deliberate and take action. Okay, there you go.
Okay, my name is Joy Wilson. I'm in building B as well, same address, same property. My situation is different in that I applied here recently. I have been a full-time resident of Georgetown for 3 years. When I applied, when I looked at the town's website, it does show that there are available short-term rentals in my location. When I called the town, I was told that there was some availability, so I applied. And then the town told me that there was no longer availability, but suggested that I do a short-term rental in one of my bedrooms of my 2-bedroom condo. So I went through everything, all of the steps to do that, got all my letters done, got my insurance, licensure from the state, from the city, all of that done. Not complaining, but I went through all of that and only to be called the next day saying that there was a mistake and there was an error and I was denied. So that was a little bit of a roller coaster for me. After hearing the results of what just happened, I'm just curious, is it impossible for the board to, reconsider your ordinance? That's one of my main questions.
Here.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Go ahead, okay, so is it impossible to reconsider the ordinance? The other thing I would like to mention, in our buildings, there's a huge parking lot. We each have 2 parking spaces, there's ample parking. If we are not using 2 of our short-term rental licenses in one of the buildings because it's not allowed, would it be impossible to consider allocating that to building D? Is that a possibility? Since those aren't being used and they are available and they can't be used, could we possibly have those in our building? The other thing that is a little bit confusing to me, if we are talking about following the law is 1 per building, and currently we are not following the law because we have 2 in our building, which is unfair. And not only that, just only allowing 1 or 2 per building is creating a monopoly. And it's denying me my rights as a homeowner to rent out my property. I would like the income, you know, for when I'm not there to be able to rent it. And then the possibility that was given to me to rent out 1 room, that seemed like the kind of meet in the middle. Of course, I prefer to rent the whole thing. But then that was taken from me too. So I'm getting, it sounds like this is kind of a common thing. And there's a bit of misinformation. You know, if you look at the website now, probably it still says that there's available, but it's not. Being told it's available and then being denied. All of it has been, you know, just kind of confusing for me. So I'm wondering if it's impossible to reconsider it. I'd like to ask for a variance from you, or maybe just a way to meet in the middle so that we can come to some kind of agreement. You know, it does not hurt our building to have more than 2 short-term rental. It's gonna create, you know, competition. You know, maybe one might cater to a higher end and one to a lower end or more affordable. And I guess that's really all that I have to say. There's probably a lot more because I'm in touch with it, remember, and I'm nervous.
Okay,
That's it.
all right, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? On the board? No? All right, next we will have town staff. Present.
And this is in the same situation I explained earlier. It was oversight from staff. It was caught. Because of that, we've kind of changed internal policy that as soon as we get a call from a short-term rental, we're gonna immediately check it before they even do the application. So that no one is misled per se, that there really is an opening and there could potentially not be an opening. But we do review all of them, and so sometimes the staff load is hard to be able to check it, but we will start checking that beforehand. Variance is not an option for this, so that doesn't fall under town code's procedure. Also, your homeowners association, you have to check in case of subleasing, they may not even allow that under your HOA. This unfortunately doesn't allow you to do that either because it doesn't trump the proximity limits just because if you're a homeowner versus a second homeowner. So unfortunately, the town code is still clear that it gives direction in order to meet. And so in this situation, that's not allowed. And so as far as 2 per building, that's another one that we have to check to see how is that allowed, 2 per building. So some of these, it's out of sight, out of mind. We don't know unless we check them regularly. And so when we do check, we have to either revoke a permit because it's not allowed, or we have to amend it in order to adjust that. So I will check into that. As far as the building with 2, depends on how many units are in a building. And so we'll double check on that too. So anyways, there's nothing else to add. It just did not meet code. We tried in every way to examine this to see if this one was a little different. However, after legal advice, it was not. It fell under the same situation, and so it was denied, unfortunately.
Okay, so one question I had was, are there actual statements out on our website that give availability of licenses?
There are availabilities in Ward 3, but
Okay,
the proximity limits don't allow certain people to do it.
okay,
Yeah.
got it.
For example, if you can't abut another property, or has to be 5 segments between. And then it goes into specific about things that you can't have the density, it's a limitation, so yeah, it does.
Okay.
I have a question for staff, but is in order to transfer from one building to another, is that our jurisdiction or would that be the HOA?
The parking lot.
So if they wanted to take a short-term rental from another building and transfer it to another.
It's still good, so that would cost it.
Yeah, it would
Be
still,
outside the density.
it would still not
Okay.
fit the code
Yeah,
as it's written.
Right,
it's a hypothetical situation that can exist.
yeah.
We take individual parcels and units, we don't look at a transfer from other.
Okay, next.
I'd like to say something. It's not just parking and the space limitations. When these things were under consideration, the discussion frequently covered that people who actually live in the building have people who are vacationing, traipsing back and forth. And there's nothing wrong with being happy and enjoying your vacation, but it's loud and rollicking frequently and disturbs the people who are living there. And so we have to keep that in mind too, that it's not just the parking. There are other aspects that were figured into these regulations.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have a response, if you like.
So I didn't have my question answered, if it's impossible to reconsider the ordinance.
Well, I thought we'd already actually, discussed I mentioned looking at revising the ordinance. Mary also mentioned it being a high priority with her, but that does take time. It's not something we can slap on the agenda today. It takes a while to actually collect all, we'd have to start out with public input, so I'm definitely in favor of relooking at this. It's been, we've had a lot of suggestions, but it can't be spontaneous, it's got to be more plans.
And in my instance, I am a full-time resident.
Sure.
This is my home.
Mhm.
And it should supplemental income, which shouldn't matter, but we are talking about how it impacts people. I mean, I live there full time and I'm wanting to do it as a property owner and make that money, but that's it.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments that you want to make? Okay, all right, and then final questions from the board.
I have one question, if it's your permanent place of residence and you're renting out a room long term, we don't have anything against that, right? Or do we? There's
Is
something
it still,
against that.
city rules still,
Long term.
It's long term.
oh, long term.
I don't mean to be short-term rental in one bedroom.
Got it.
As
If you do long term in one bedroom, then there's no regulation for that, so
Yeah.
you have that.
I'd also like to have my whole house to me when I want it to, for speaking on a personal matter. But also, I'm a little bit confused. I was told that there's only 2 in my building. And the notice that I recently got must have been for them. Are there 2 in my building? I can never get a clear answer on that. And yet okay, so we are not observing the law currently.
How do you mean? You're limited to 2 per building.
But she's saying that the law states that you only have one.
The law is only 1, isn't it?
No, it says, the code actually says maximum 2 permits per building, maximum 1 permit per 6 units in a building.
Okay, there is just a lot of confusion and I've just been confused this entire time, because I was told there was two, and then an exception was made, and then I got the notices. And then I was told I could do my one bedroom as a short term because your friend had done it, and I should do that. And it's just been confusing. I would love to see the list of applicants and have that public knowledge. I would love to see where I'm on the list of applicants. I mean, does such a thing exist?
Yeah,
Is it like paper? Like, I would love to see that, just to know if we're speaking in terms of how long you guys waited, how long am I gonna have to wait? I have no idea. It would be nice to know this, and the lottery suggestion would be great, particularly where we live. It would be very helpful to have that.
Okay. Okay, any further final questions from the board? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing on this. It is 6:42 p.m. And board deliberation is next, and taking action.
I'll make a motion to deny the short-term rental of Bill Joy Wilson, 1890 Argentine Street, D103.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Everybody understands the motion, is that correct? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much for bringing it to us.
Can I bring something up very quick? Doug Roscoff is here. He was, under agenda item number 1.
Do you want, we did approve your appointment, but if you want to introduce yourself,
Okay,
please.
yeah, I am Doug Roscoff, trying to be appointed onto the planning commission. I want to get involved into the community. I've been here for almost 2 years now. In July, I'll be here for the full 2 years. Operate a power plant, so know about following different codes and different procedures and such. So just trying to improve or benefit the community that I live in as well. So look forward to it and look forward to learning. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I did wonder when I read your letter of intent, it didn't give a lot of background on what experience you might be bringing to.
So I have a lot of leadership experience. I'm not a builder, but very interested in how I was trying to get involved in city government down in Fort Morgan, where I originally moved up here from. Was starting to talk to a lot of the city council members about the process of getting involved down in Fort Morgan when I took the transfer to operate that pump hydro plant up Winilla Pass. Then I was trying to get a hold of Ken Brown, and then he since then took a different position. So was trying to find out how to get involved. And so through Dwayne and Rick, a lot of different questions have been asked. So this is a good stepping stone to get involved into the town community and in the code and understand just how it all works. So that's where I'm eager to learn, and leadership is my main background. So I'm pretty fluent in parliamentary procedure and just understanding and making decisions that come across from the community. So
All right, appreciate it.
yeah,
You too. Welcome to both of you on the planning commission.
thank you.
Nice to meet all.
Hi, thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, for your permit.
While things are in transition, I'd like to say that at a meeting earlier, well, last week now, we discovered that if when you're speaking, you face the owl, it tends to come out slightly clearer. We still get echoing off the walls, but it helps with the sound. So, please look at the owl when you're talking.
Thank you. Thank you. Yep,
That is the.
our owl is there.
I'm also with the wind.
Yeah.
All right. Next, we have an appeal hearing. This is an appeal from level 3 alteration regarding 606 6th Street. We have also some procedures. This is, I'm gonna call the hearing to order in just a moment. And then we'll have a presentation by the appellant, Craig Abrahamson, on behalf of CCPS Inc. and the owner. Questions by the board, presentation by the building official, and then questions by the board, response, if any, from the appellant, then final questions by the board, and then I will close the hearing, and then the board will deliberate and take action. So, I'm gonna go ahead and call it to order. It is 6:47 PM. And Craig, you're on.
All right. You just have it here, I'll share my screen. Thank you, John. Okay, so you do the work. To start with, go Nuggets. I'm Craig Abrahamson. I'm a licensed professional engineer here in Georgetown, and I'm representing Stephen Julia Selby of Dunvegan LLC, legal owner of the property in question, 606 6th Street, and representative of the general contractor here, Chris Passage, and Mark Reynolds as well. So a little bit about my background. I've got a bachelor's and master's in civil engineering from CSU, and been a practicing PE since for about 25 years or so. And I have extensive background in restoration as well as adaptive use of historic buildings, including the 1874 Georgetown School, the Silverfoot School building, and a few in Idaho Springs as well. So this kind of project is well within my wheelhouse. I also forgot to introduce Tom Peterson, my colleague. He's an architect here in Georgetown. He's consulting with us on this project as well. So the not set up for Zoom friendliness here. So the applicant is appealing to building officials and interpretation. Make sure to look at the owl. All right. Well, I'm gonna look at the owl. I'm gonna have to. Do your best. The applicant is appealing to building officials. It's gonna seem like I'm staring at Mary the whole time. That's gonna be her. We're appealing to building officials' interpretation related to the applicability of the 2015 IABC and its provisions to the repair of fire damage that occurred at the subject property. You're probably all familiar with the subject property. It's what we all actually know of as the RAM 606 6th Street. It's actually two. The building itself has two addresses: 600 and 606 Street. It was constructed in 1889. It's known as the fifth block. It is and has been a mixed occupancy building consisting of an assembly area, also known as the restaurant, retail, and residential spaces. The assembly space, which is the restaurant, and the corresponding work area, and we'll get to the definition of that in a minute, has held that occupancy at the restaurant since the 50s, and has been known as the Loop Bar, and the Red Ramp, and most recently as Lucha Cantina. In May 2020, the building caught fire in the dark of night while shut down for COVID. And these are a couple of photographs here post-fire. The photograph on the right, let me get my cursor over there. That's taken in, I don't know, it's probably a couple of weeks after the fire. As part of the forensic investigation, I was actually contracted by Stephen and Julia to help them scope the stabilization post-fire, as well as scope out the work in order to price it for the insurance company and the insurance claim as well. So you can see in that photo on the left, this is taken from the basement, looking up towards where the balcony used to be in that space. And those are tables actually coming through the floor. The fire is thought to have started off in that corner of the basement and worked its way across. You can see this This is the floor decking above, which you don't see any joists, right? There's no structural frame there, so those were all completely destroyed in that area. This middle picture here is shortly after work was initiated at the property, and we'll get into that a little bit more later too. You can see down at the bottom where the floor is cut out. That area is generally consistent with this area here where there was extensive damage to the floor framing. But you can see the charring on the walls there, and then this picture taken at a similar point in time, looking down into the basement from ground level. Again, you can see the damage to that primary beam running across and supporting the main floor. But what you can also see is a largely intact front bar here, an intact flooring here and towards the front of the building as well. I don't have pictures looking towards the back. From this area, you look back towards the kitchen, and that kitchen, the kitchen area was largely intact, although it did have extensive heat damage. You can see one interesting thing here, the way the fire progressed from the basement up into the main level. It vented fairly early out this front window, and I've got some pictures of that here shortly, but that kind of prevented the buildup of heat and toxic fumes in this space, so it never really had a reason to penetrate that separation going up to the second floor of the building. This is just a photo, well, actually from a video, but that's the morning of the fire. The fire department had been on scene for quite some time. There's nobody in the building right now actively fighting this fire. They're just dumping water through that opening there, which you know, caused extensive water damage and also contributed to the damage to the floor system. Thank you, Shannon. You're good. So that, again, after breaching that main floor of the restaurant, the fire vented out through the front window. The walls and the ceiling of the main level were not breached by the fire. There was extensive heat damage, but the actual covering remained there. It has since been removed and is down to the brick, and there's really no charring on the brick at all. I don't have photos of that for you. The adjacent residential, which is above, and the retail, which is known as Ophelia's adjacent, only received smoke damage and some limited water damage from the firefighting operation. So this is just to kind of show you the documentation of the building. This is a property record card from the assessor's office that gives you the legal description. Not terribly interesting. This one is a little bit more interesting. This is a Sanborn fire insurance map from 1890. And you can see the building. Hope you can see my cursor here. Oh, come on. Right here, can you see my cursor? That's the building itself. It is a single building. Consists of 12,800 square feet, I think. And again, has been in that configuration since it was constructed in 1890, used for various things, obviously, over the years. Like I think in this one of the areas is a confectionery. But since the 1950s, the existing configuration of residential on the upper level, restaurant on the west side of the main level, and retail on the east side of the main level is the configuration. I love these sample maps. This is just a pretty good, clean graphic representation from the assessment record. You see the first floor schematically shown there on the left at 4,400 square feet. The second floor at 4,000 square feet there in the middle. And then it kind of shows the basement is two areas, the finished and unfinished. The finished area at 3,360 and the unfinished area at 1,040. So as I said, the total building floor area is 12,800 square feet. The floor area of the work area, which is here I kind of described as the basement of the RAM, quote unquote, and the main level of the RAM in their entirety is 3,300 square feet, which comes to a percentage of work. The work area in terms of the entirety of the building is 27%, which is a number that's relevant looking at that. So, building code 101, super fun stuff. But that's gonna roll our eyes at me. So the town has adopted the 20, in addition to other codes, the 2015 International Existing Building Code. And it gives you 3 different approaches to address repair or alteration of existing buildings. One is the prescriptive method. I like to describe that as the cookbook method. Do A, B, C, D, and E, and we're all good. The work area method is more involved, has broader, it gives you greater flexibility, but also can come with greater requirements in terms of depending on the level of work involved. And then there's the performance method, which I personally hate. I've only implemented one time, and I find it remarkably subjective, even though it's quantitative, quote unquote, by scoring different aspects of the work. But we've essentially determined that the work area method was the most straightforward approach, and so we moved forward with that. Within the work area method, there's several possible courses of action, and these kind of start from level of complexity from a code perspective and work their way to a more complicated generally. So you start with repairs, then there's alterations level 1, 2, and 3. And you can kind of imagine an alteration level 1 is a fairly straightforward scope of work, and alteration level 3 is a fairly extensive scope of work. There's change of occupancy. So if you're changing the use of a space, additions, historic buildings, and relocating. So the original application was submitted in January, and it proposed a scope that consists of kind of a straightforward like-for-like approach with a configuration that was consistent with that which existed prior to the fire, or at least as close as we could get to with the information that we had at hand. So because we weren't changing the configuration of the space, we felt that the repair provision of the IUBC applied. It's worth going through some definitions in the IUBC. The definition of existing building is a building prior to the date of adoption of the appropriate code, or one for which a legal building permit has been issued. So obviously this building meets that criterion as defined as an existing building. The provisions of the International Existing Building Code shall apply to repair, alteration, change of occupancy, addition to, and relocation of existing buildings. Good, sounds like the provisions that you see apply there too. This is important. So the intent of the code is to provide flexibility to permit the use of alternate approaches to achieve compliance with minimum requirements to safeguard the public health, safety, and welfare insofar as they are affected by the repair, alteration, change of occupancy, or addition or relocation of buildings. So the IUBC is intended to acknowledge, if you will, that not all rules can apply to all existing buildings because they were built during different eras, some outside the existence of building codes in their entirety, as this one was. So then we get into IUBC Chapter 5, which is the scoping component for the work area method. And I know this is incredibly tedious, but it's relevant. So repairs are defined in Chapter 2 as including the patching or restoration or replacement of damaged materials, elements, equipment, or fixtures for the purpose of maintaining such components in good or sound condition with respect to existing loads or performance requirements. So I can replace an element of the building with a new element, and it qualifies as a repair under the IUBC.
When you say that, do you mean like instead of wood, you'd use a steel beam?
That would be a possibility, yes. So a little bit of timeline here. So work was initiated in mid-2022 prior to the application for a building permit being submitted. And this has complicated this whole process, to be sure. The work included removal of wall and ceiling coverings, removal and replacement of damaged floor framing components, reconstruction of lower level walls, and replacement of the concrete slab in the basement. So when you walk in there now, you see an awful lot of what looks like new construction. However, it's construction that is allowed under the IABC, it just occurred without a permit. So we've had several meetings and emails and correspondence between myself, Representative Steve and Julia, Safeville, Dan and Terry, as well as Rick, the town administrator. And the timeline is really well detailed in Rick's staff report. And then our letter from April 17th has a lot of timeline information in it too. I won't bore you with that again. Essentially, and I'm generalizing here because it's hard to nail down specifics given the extent of the communication between us. But essentially, the applicant and Safeville disagree on the applicability of the IABC and its provisions to the project. And that's what we're appealing here, is their interpretation of the applicability of the IABC and its provisions. I'm going to paraphrase this, and I'm sure Dan will give you more specifics. Essentially, through the correspondence, Safeville has contended that the project be treated as new construction, or at least as alteration level 3, due to the extent of fire damage and reconstruction that has occurred and or it is required. But given that the work area is only 27% of total building floor area, alteration, the work area method, when you scope it in chapter 5 says, if the work area exceeds 50% of the total building floor area, then the provisions of alteration level 3 shall be applied to the entire work area. The work area is only 27% of the entire floor area of the building, so we don't believe alteration level 3 is the correct scope for the project. So as we worked through this process through several meetings and a lot of correspondence, the applicant, or with the applicant's permission, we proposed a number of additional measures in an effort to meet some of the concerns of Georgetown as the authority having jurisdiction. Those included the addition of a handicap accessible restroom on the main level of the restaurant. For those of you who are familiar with it, there are no restrooms on the main level. The only restrooms are down the stairs. The installation of an automatic fire suppression system in the work area, which would be the main level of the restaurant as well as the lower level of the restaurant. And the addition of a second means of egress from the seating area of the restaurant to the exterior of the building as well. We just want to clarify, we don't believe that these measures are required given the scope of work. However, we agree that these are good measures to take in the best interest of both the building's owner, as well as the general public. Yeah, just to sum up, we believe that in essence, the building code is the correct document for us to be scoping this project from. We think if we propose a like-for-like reconstruction of that space, that the repair provisions of the code apply because the work area is less than 50% of the total floor area of the building. Again, the applicants are agreeing to go beyond what they believe is required by the code to make efforts to make the building safer and more accessible to the general public. And just, you guys all know how important this building is. And every day that goes by that building isn't housing a business that attracts people to Georgetown and offers them a well-rounded experience is the day that the downtown Georgetown suffers, and we've all seen it suffer significantly since this incident took place. So that's it for my presentation. Not exhaustive. I'm assuming you've read my document before, so that's for more of the details. And I'm happy to answer any questions you got.
Okay, questions from the board?
I have a question that has little to do with the actual revamping of this. Did they ever come up with a cause for the fire? I have never heard what started it.
They did, generally speaking, I think it's safe to say it was electrical in nature, and that's about all. You can, I'm sure you can get the actual cause report from the fire authority if you like.
So I have one question about the square footage. Is it just the burn where the land was that we're talking about, the total, or is it the entire building?
The work area is just the RAM and the basement beneath the RAM,
Okay.
but the entirety of those spaces.
Yeah, okay.
Because again, the remainder of the building suffered smoke, and some water damage, but none of it requires extensive renovation or replacement of materials.
Can you go over how you calculated the percentage? The 27% again, so what levels you're taking into consideration and
Sure.
what?
So the levels are the main level,
Right.
west side, which is the restaurant portion,
Mhm.
and the basement beneath it. That's the work area.
Is there any basement beneath Ophelia's?
There is, but that just received smoke damage.
But in that square footage where you showed us the floor,
It's in
the square
that's in the
footage?
total, that is in the total building area, 12,800 square feet. It's not in the work area that's, the only work that needs to take place in that space is mitigation of smoke damage.
Right, but the figures that you threw out before, the 3360 in the basement and the 1040 of the storage, if you go back another slide, did any of that 3360, was that?
Those areas are approximate. My areas are based on actual measurements.
Okay, but just from my unprofessional engineer point of view, your basement of 3360, is any of that under Ophelia's?
Yes,
Okay, it's all of them
it's under Ophelia, a portion.
is under,
The
yeah,
east half of that is
Okay.
under Ophelia, yes.
which is not part of this.
Not part of the work
Got
area,
it.
it just
Understand that.
damage. And some water damage.
So the way you get to 27%, I think we all did it, is the restaurant and the basement you need are 27% of
The total
The
building.
total.
Correct. Thank you.
The-
Will that door that's boarded up down in the basement be opened so that there will be two or better egresses?
Yes, that's one of the stipulations that we're making, is that we will add a second means of egress from the main level, which will also, it'll also serve as a second means of egress for the lower
I'm
levels.
talking the basement, because if I have to go down the steps like we always did to use the bathroom, and something happens upstairs that those stairs are no longer available for me to exit, I want to have a second exit someplace and clearly marked so I can find it if, say, for example, the electric's out.
We haven't designed it yet, but we have scoped a second means of egress from the main level, and let me finish my statement. From the main level that goes through the basement and out the north end of the building, so it will also serve as a second means of egress. It actually takes advantage of a second means of egress from an existing one from the main, it's lower level.
Okay, other questions?
Oh, come on.
We're not done yet.
First, I hear from Dan. Actually, before I hear from Dan, just so that I'm going along and trying to make notes. So and I think it's probably clear from your materials, but maybe make it clear to the board. Sure. So when you get to 27%, when you're below 50%, that allows you to then access as part of your appeal, the EDC. And if you do that, that lets you access what level of.
The 27% relative to 50% is only relevant for, because it's a scoping, it's a essential part of the scoping aspect of the process. So again, we go to chapter 5,
we use the work area method to go to the scoping portion of the chapter 5, and one of those provisions is alteration level, let's see, 505 alteration level 3, 505.1 scope. Level 3 alterations apply where the work area exceeds 50% of the building area. Well, we don't, so we don't have to worry about that provision. So it's kind of a process of elimination, if you will.
It leads you to level 2, not level.
Will lead us elsewhere, right? So we don't have to worry about that provision of the code driving us to alteration level 3. That's really all. It doesn't say anything more than that.
That's helpful.
Okay. Anything else? All right,
I don't stop.
all right. Next, we have presentation by the building official.
Please say that again.
Next, we have presentation by the building official.
Okay. My name's Dan Wester. I work for Safe Built. I've been your inspector since 2011, in and out of your town. I've been your building official since 16. Worked with Craig on many different jobs. I could go into my background. Went to school for construction management degree. I'm a master electrician, been in construction trade my entire life. Craig, if you could bring up your slides again, I think you did a good job. I'll bring up mine here in a bit, show the screen. But I also want to follow Mr. Dahl's question, is that this 27%, now you're including the entire building area as legally described with, that has Ophelia and Lucia in all 3 levels.
That's correct.
And that includes, the 27% also includes the gutting of that basement floor.
Yeah, it includes the floor area of the entire basements, the entire west side.
Right, yeah.
And then the entire floor area of Lucha, the restaurant and the kitchen, or the dining area and the kitchen.
Okay.
So yes.
All right, so I would agree with Craig that he is less than 50%, and that does take him out of the alteration 3. I think I can agree with you on that, Craig. I do want to say that the alteration 2 probably does exist because the reconfiguration of the space. Now, I know that you are replacing elements that burned out, and that's your argument to stay in repairs or maybe in level 1. But the reconfiguration of the space with the expansion of the restrooms. So level 1 is, we're in this building and we don't move walls. We work on finishes that, we want to replace. But the space remains the same as far as the configuration. Level 2 is in pretty broad strokes, reconfiguration of the space. You move walls, okay, inside of the building footprint. Okay, that's level 2. Level 3 is, to my understanding and reading of the code, expanding the footprint, adding square footage, okay. So we're not at 3, and we have not exceeded 50% in the reconfiguration of the space. So I do believe that we could live in an alteration 2 in the existing building code. All right. I would like to point out, and I can share my screen here in a minute. Somewhere along the line in Craig's historic explanation of this building from the 1900s, 1950, he used a couple different numbers in the 1800s. There used to be 2 exits out of that basement. And there used to be 2 exits off of that main floor that were completely separate. That had 2 or 4 means of egress out of that space. And they have removed 2 of those 4. And if you are going to use existing building code and in its truest, the way it's worded, you can't make the building worse in egress and life safety. Somewhere along the line, there was a kitchen built on the back of this because it's made of block and the building itself is made of brick. they compromised, and I think this is the time I can share my screen. It compromised, the foundation underneath it. And that goes along that line of, that plywood. It was covered up. I think this is it here. So, can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
All right. Want to get to this sheet here. This is upstairs. Here's Craig's code path. His fire code path that he gave us. I didn't even know that. Somewhere along the lines in this building, there used to be an exit right about here. And I think the door went out here. And then they exited here. It has since turned to mercantile space behind Ophelia's, okay? And they've lost the second exit out of the back here. And I'll show you that.
Are you sure you're not talking about the door that's on the other side of the room?
There's not a door, well,
It used to be.
is it,
You
see,
used to be able to leave that, if you enlarge that,
Help me out with that.
see that door right there on the street? That's how you left.
It looks like a reverse bay window.
oh, right here, now that was out of Ophelia's, yes.
No, that used to be a part of the dining. That was.
All right. But was there not an exit out here? Because I can show you one from the, if you're standing on 7, you can see one.
That, are you sure that's not?
And now, I'm not, now listen, now, I've been around since 11 and building official since 16. So I'm gonna need some help here on the historic footprint of this building. But I do believe that there was, this wall used to come straight here, did it not?
No.
At one time, ever?
Not ever.
Not ever, okay? So was there ever a door that cut in through here then?
Yeah, there was a way you got into the dining room.
Right.
past the wall.
And did I have access to another egress?
That bay window that looks like a
Okay.
door.
So I did have at one time access to another egress besides this one up here,
That's correct.
out of this main level dining room.
Yeah.
We would ask that we have, because if you look at his occupant load here, he's got 70. So 50, is your tipping point for 2 exits. Okay, he's got 70 up here. And he's got, another, 36 up top in that balcony, right?
Yes, but yeah.
So you got 100 up here, and then the basement has also got, I'm sorry. The basement's got 96 in down here, okay? So there's gonna need to be 2 exits out of here. And at one point, there was an exit that's boarded up now that goes out the back.
Yeah.
Okay, is everybody in agreement with that?
Yeah.
So my position with Georgetown is just life safety, accessibility, and code compliant, right? And I understand this building's been around a long time, and it's not gonna be a perfect wish list we're gonna get. But I think if we can secure the proper code compliant exits, egress out of this building, and they have conceded to offering a sprinkler system in this, that would be helpful. And they've also offered up an accessible family restroom upstairs. Is it gonna be a family or just an accessible restroom?
It's, the intent is a unit, the space allows for a unisex accessible
Right,
restroom.
right. So,
Not technically, a little bit larger could be a family,
right,
but that's the intent right now.
okay. You know, I think if we could get there, we're a long way away from where this is now. And he's also got this exit up here. Craig, his team. It's going through. Where's my mouse? Bear with me. It's going through that kitchen. We cannot exit through a kitchen. We cannot have a code compliant life safety egress through a kitchen. Just, it's not allowed to code. You know, you're not gonna run past, you know, and pick up a pot of hot grease on the way out the door. You just can't do it. So I think if we can figure out a way to get out the back door, and get out the back, that north side towards Seventh. And we have lots of dirt back there to make it accessible. So we're not discriminating against, physically challenged people. Okay? There is a picture towards the very end of this. Sorry, Jen, I got ready to repeat it. You're good. Right here. So I picked up some pictures. So if somebody could help me understand this. My understanding was that somewhere in this area, there used to be a second exit, no?
No, if you go down below. So you might,
No, not all.
if I just help clarify for Dan or.
Yeah, let's,
Okay, so the kitchen, and this is anecdotal by interviewing. People of a certain generation, the kitchen was built sometime in the sixties.
Okay,
And
this building here.
yes, that was added sometime in the sixties by Bill Holmes. Is what I'm told. I wasn't around then. Later on in the sixties I was, but there was, if you can zoom back out, Dan, there's evidence and I don't know when this changed, it could have been.
This picture?
And that's a great picture. So that shows the north side of the kitchen, and then if you move your cursor just to the right and down a little bit, I'm sorry, to the left and down a little bit.
You want to drive?
Yes.
Thanks, Greg. Greg's now on the single team.
I got shotgun. So right in here, so on that main back face of the wall.
That's a previous picture too, if you want to click it.
There is a, what looks like used to be a doorway. And I think it's from the original building configuration
Right.
back in 1890. I don't know when that was abandoned, but it could have been abandoned in the sixties when they added the kitchen. I don't know.
I can show you that.
But then also in this space, and Dan referred to it as a boarded up exit from the lower level. It's still there. It's boarded up temporarily on the inside. But that's a means of egress out of the lower level. And I'll talk more about that here when we do some questions and answers.
And I appreciate, Craig and I have been working together for many years. I appreciate his expertise and speaking about this old building. Okay. But I think this is the picture that somebody brought up earlier about the boarded up exit. That is the one that comes out right here. Okay. Is that true?
Yes, it's.
All right. And also, I'm very concerned about when they built that kitchen and somebody blew a hole in this foundation wall. I mean, how bad is that? It's been standing for a long time, but how bad has that been compromised? Is there a lintel or beam been put on top of that, or how has that been handled? So I'm concerned about that. But if we had an exit out of this space here, and we also have one out in front, this could be made accessible out of that basement. And I think, out of this, where are we going with this? Can you make an accessible exit out of this space over here, Craig? And I know this is supposed to be not a question and answer, but see right over top of this, that there's a door that's been closed off right here.
So that's actually a window.
That's a window.
Can that window be converted into an exit? Why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Dan, what we're gonna propose, if we can come to an agreement this evening, is that second means of egress, and it's allowed by section 1019.3 of the IBC. It would allow us, go back to my floor plan, that main floor plan. It would allow us to use that stairway that was originally.
This one?
Yeah, anything that shows the main level. 1019.3 would allow us to utilize that stairway, which kind of exists in that long narrow space right there up towards the top. It would allow us to use that as a second means of egress from the main level through the basement. It would meet our distance requirements. We've analyzed it. It would meet our distance requirements. It doesn't have to be a protected opening because it's serving a ground level floor and not an upper level floor, so we don't have to protect that opening with 1 hour separation or anything. And again, it would take advantage of the existing means. Yes, it would take advantage of that existing means of egress there from the lower level. So basically, we have to 1 hour protect that basement, that corridor in the basement band. And we'd be using that stair there, so you go down those stairs and out from the main level, and that would be a legit second means of egress. We think we know we can accomplish that, but, well, go ahead.
So the building department's argument towards this would be that, well, I've got some questions in here and I don't want to be that guy, but you guys, everybody that's on that team, you've been doing construction long enough, you knew better than start this without a permit, okay? When you built, you gutted this whole basement floor and you reconfigured these bathrooms, you had an opportunity to do a lot of different things with that money other than what you did here, okay? And so to ask for this to go down to the existing building code and follow this pathway, that's what really it got us all twisted up, okay? That's, and building without a permit, y'all knew better than that. It's not your first time around. So that's what got everything all twisted up in this whole thing. And when we walked in there and we see so much new construction, that entire basement was done, the whole first floor. And it wasn't until this week, was it Friday maybe, Rick, that we determined that was an entire building. And that space, we were looking for a IBC, that's a new construction building code, because we thought Lucha was in itself its own address with property lines, okay? So it was a realization very late in the game that we realized that it was Ophelia's and Lucha in its entirety, the 3 floors. So there's where the 50% really turned on its head, okay? So we are looking for, at minimum, 2 code compliant means of egress, a sprinkler system, and accessibility for somebody to use the restrooms and to, utilize this space to get in and out of it in a wheelchair or with some degree of difficulty. That's what we're looking for at minimum. We're not gonna get there in the entirety of its building code, but those are the minimums that we think a lot of liability could be lifted off of Georgetown if we press for that. Because if we go anything less, I just think we're asking for trouble. And I think I'm done at that point. Barry, I know you're online. Do you have anything to say about this? He's our state plans examining. He takes care of all the plans examining for state of Colorado for safety.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Barry Kramer. I am the plan review manager for Safe Built. I've been involved with Dan on this project for quite some time, and I guess I just want to reiterate his statement that we want 2 code compliant exits from each level. Selectman Powell expressed the concern of that lower level not having a second exit out of it. Mr. Abramson shows the exit off of that second level going through storage. That also is not allowed by code, any more so than exiting through a kitchen. So whatever path they design, I want to emphasize that both levels get a code compliant 2 exits. The occupant loads drive that at each level, and the sprinkler system goes a long way. But I think if this fire had occurred with the building occupied, it may have been a lot more serious than what happened in, I guess, the middle of the night when this happened. Because generally Toxic gases are what get people, not the fire itself. And not having adequate means of egress separated properly as required in the building code, I think creates a hazard.
Okay, thank you. Does that complete your presentation?
Do you have anything, Jerry?
Nope.
Okay, well.
I'll speak up real quick. Just one, well, this is Tom Peterson, working a little bit with Craig on this, and just regarding that basement area as new versus a rebuild. It's our understanding that what was built there and what looks new is a replacement of what was there that was completely destroyed by the fire. So that from a replacement standpoint, that I just want to point that out. That's replacement. That's really new construction, even though it's new. It's a replacement.
I gotta take exception to that, Tom. That floor did not have hydronic heat in it, did it? When it was originally built?
I missed the question.
That floor, that basement floor that was completely gutted, did not have hydronic heat in it, did it?
I would doubt it.
Exactly. So that was not destroyed by the fire. That floor was taken up and hydronic heat was purposely put in there. And you guys had plenty of opportunity. That footing and foundation that you guys tore up and put a new one in was not destroyed by the fire either. It had been holding that building up since it was built. So that was not a requirement either. So there was a long list of things that went down a bad path.
All right, for right now, it is probably time if your
You bet. I'm done.
presentation is complete, then the board gets to direct questions at you.
You bet.
So, hold on.
I have a question for you. Like when you talk about the other stuff that's been done and outside of the fire, and I kind of get where you're going with that as far as this job. It seems like you guys are kind of close on what everybody wants, and of course to be safe. How much of an impact do you feel that had towards this, or towards getting a new permit or issuing a permit just to move forward with this job?
Well, I gotta give you credit. They did have a permit for the demolition. They did pull a permit to get rid of the asbestos, all that stuff. They did have that to take it down and get rid of the fire damaged material, okay? But they didn't have the permit to continue with new construction. And I'm not sure if your question is, they did submit plans for that new flooring, that new heating, that new footing and foundation, okay? They didn't submit plans for any of that before they did it. Those new bathrooms, they didn't submit.
Right, so the issue now, because I haven't seen the new layout, how it was, or do I understand what the existing was? And that's kind of the whole issue right here. If there would have been a permit in place and there would have been plans that have been reviewed before we had started.
Right.
So I think it kind of goes on both guidelines. It's really for us to really understand between what Craig wants to do and what you guys expect to happen. I think, but it seems like we're kind of close to that, or are we far away from that?
We got very close when we found out that was one entire building.
Gotcha, because it seemed like there was a point where it was almost good, and then now we're here. So that's kind of why I'm asking. I'm just trying to kind of wrap my head around exactly what needs to happen to get there. I guess, does that make sense?
Yeah, and we'll we'll take more questions for the building officials, and then there will be opportunity for Craig to respond. I perceive, not to jump ahead, but I perceive sort of toward the end of this hearing, there will be okay, how can this get fashioned into an outcome? But I guess I would, as I always do, I would suggest not leap ahead of that. Until you kind of heard the whole story and ask the question. It's not like you won't get the chance to fashion a solution, but the solution's always better if they're kind of done at the end and you get a full a range of information. And then we can lead into that and do all the fashioning.
3 doors.
Well, there will be those. 3 doors. Well, at the moment, the spot for that is just learning as much as you can from Dan Western Company, and then we'll learn a little more from Craig, and ask him questions, and then you'll probably be in that spot.
But so our appeal really is whether or not it falls into what level alteration, right? Because initially, when you prepared the appeal, you were saying it was level 3, and you were saying, oh, no, it's 1 or 2, kind of an in-betweener. So we, right. So the agreement that I hear you leaning towards is you now say, yes, doesn't fall into a level 3 because of the percentage, because you just discovered this within the last week or so, few days,
Right.
that it's all one building, it's this huge blah, blah, blah building. So all this discussion is great, and I love it. And I'd love to ask you more about what you're going to, approve, and I get the penalty piece, and I get how it was done wrong to begin with, which I have an issue with also, but that's not what we're here for. We're here for level 1, 2, or 3. You were saying 3, you were saying 1 or 2, you've agreed now it's, are we not?
I think the piece that, if you're asking,
And we can still discuss all this
I
other stuff, because
think the
I'm
piece-
game for this whole building code piece.
I
but-
think that if we're gonna stay in this existing building code level 2, let's go back to the existing building when it had enough exits. Somewhere along the line, those exits have been captured and taken away.
But we've also been provided then with permits and certificate of completion from whatever, 2011, and a kitchen renovation where it was signed off on, or it appears to have been signed off on by Mr. Hoover, who was our building inspector back then. And a certificate of completion was granted, so that would have possibly fallen into
But that
that
was for
scope.
that piece of the kitchen, I have not seen that, but.
But that would have affected
It's the kitchen, but not.
some of the egress that you're talking about,
Not necessarily.
But you
If
don't
that
know.
was just.
but you don't know.
I think the point you're trying to make, Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, is that that's our baseline, was the last certificate of occupancy, what the building was last used for, and the condition of that building, including the exits, that were available in that, and that the level of alteration as it's outlined in the code is stating that we don't, we place things and repair things, but don't make it a worse condition than it was before. If we can improve upon it, certainly yes, where it makes sense and where it's feasible to do so. But I guess the point being, back to what you were just stating with the previous certificate of occupancy, should be the baseline of what was approved and what we strive to meet or exceed.
But so we don't have any evidence of that, and again, I can talk about this all night long, because I can be geeky about this, but I don't think that's what we're here for. I think we're here, and there's no evidence that goes back more than what I have in the certificate of completion. We're here to discuss whether it falls into level 1, 2, or 3. And that seems to me quite clear cut. We can't go back 20 years ago and point the finger and say what wasn't done right or wrong then. We're not here to correct that. We're here to determine that level.
Sorry.
Well, I think though, but off the level 2, is what they're saying is where it falls into that time frame of whether or not how the egress falls into that. Correct, Dan?
Correct.
So that being said, is if we show something that was permitted and done, my question then is, it was permitted, it was accepted, but was it missed on having the egress that should have been, which is my question to you, Dan. It's, if somebody permits something, stuff gets passed all the time and still gets missed. That just happens.
But we can't fault now.
No, true.
From 12 years ago, if I'm doing my math right,
Which
whenever,
can't keep going.
Dan, can you express why it is that you feel strongly about reestablishing what would be a required second exit from both of those levels?
Well, I'm not sure this,
What in the code justifies you to ask for it?
well, because if we're gonna be in this existing building code, all right, and it needs to go back to its last code compliant configuration. That's about as simple as I can put it. And I don't think that's a code compliant configuration where it doesn't have that second exit out of the back. You know, separation out of both levels. Those are not code compliant configurations.
But is our contractor agreeing that you're going to supply the second egress and it's not gonna be through a building storage unit or section of the basement?
So, yeah, I think I can put this issue to bed. So part of the reason we're in agreement, it's gonna sound weird. Yes, the building existed in that configuration at the time of the fire and was considered safe for occupancy by some higher power, right? Nobody shut the building, nobody shut the business down for X number of years, and it was operating in that context. And therefore, and it didn't have that second means of egress. So therefore, that's the baseline that we believe is legitimate to work from. Errors on the part, for whatever reason, the second means of egress was removed or disappeared, and it was not an issue that rose to the level of shutting down the business that occupied the space. So that's the baseline. However, as a design professional, as a volunteer firefighter for 25 years, and I've had this conversation with Steve and Julia from a building owner's perspective, it's legit to look for a second means of egress from an assembly space that has 50 or more occupants, period. You don't want to be that guy in court going, right? I don't want to be that guy, they don't want to be that guy. So we put that issue to bed in our proposal to add a legitimate second means of egress from the main level. It will not pass through storage area. It will be a corridor that's compliant with the means of egress requirements in the IBC. And it'll satisfy everyone's legitimate concern about a second means of egress from that assembly space in the main level. And but again, the baseline is not that. The baseline is something else. We just want acknowledgement of that, because I think it plays into then how we proceed in terms of classification of this moving forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, any other questions?
Wait. So if we're opening up this door then, the lower level, the basement level, where the egress is going to be. I thought that was the storage area.
We can create a corridor that's
Okay.
not storage.
Okay.
There is storage in that level. We can create a corridor that is not
Okay.
storage. It is.
and that is true.
Okay.
And redesign. Yes, Deanne?
Earlier, when we were talking about that window on the north side being made into an egress, it was blithely said, no, we're not going to bother. We're going to have both the basement and the main floor funnel into that one single exterior door. I have a problem with that. That's not two separate ones. And if we have 70 or 100 panicked people trying to get out of two levels and funneling into one single person sized doorway, and especially if it has any kind of problem with handicapped accessibility, I really think there should be two exterior doors, one for the main level and one for the basement level, and they can come out side by side or up and down from each other, however it needs to be configured. But to have them both go into that one single outside door is not two egresses, that's one egress.
Doesn't that change the historical facade?
You want me to address that?
Please.
So, Dan, it's a legitimate point. The code, while it's not completely clear in a lot of aspects, it's super clear in this aspect. It's allowable, it's allowable to share and exit between spaces. But then essentially what happens is the number of occupants in those spaces drives the width of that means of egress. Right, so for every occupant, it needs to be X number of inches wide. And there's a minimum to that. And as big as we feel like this building is, actually, you'd be surprised, fairly standard exits and doorway sizes will satisfy the code requirements under the IBC for what we're going to propose. So but it's a great question.
Well,
But
like you said, you didn't want to be the guy at the court case explaining why after a fire, a whole bunch of people got killed. I don't want to be one of the people that got killed because I can't get out.
It won't be because the means of egress that we're proposing is big enough.
Okay, any other questions?
This is questions of Dan.
Yes,
Since
correct.
Craig hasn't had his
Correct,
second shot.
yeah,
Hang on.
okay. I'm seeing none, so any response from the appellant?
No, I think the dialogue has addressed it, and I agree wholeheartedly. And again, that the second means of egress is important. The building owners agree that the second means of egress is important. We want to do it in a way that's minimally impactful to the other operations of the building. What I will take this moment to articulate, however, is that to accommodate, again, and that's why we want to we're leaning on the baseline of what existed the day of the fire. To accommodate the handicap accessible restroom and to accommodate this legitimate means of egress will require reconfiguration, because it will require code compliant stairway. The previous stairway was not. It will require a stairway of certain width based on the number of occupants in the main level. Right, that wouldn't be accommodated by the stairway that existed prior. There'll be configuration of walls in the basement to create that corridor. That reconfiguration in any other context would kick me up to alteration level 2. Here's the issue. Alteration level 2 has additional fire separation requirements on top of alteration level 1 that would be yet an additional burden on the applicant. Again, we're proposing a sprinkler for the lower and main levels. We would propose to replace with a light fire assembly that existed between the spaces before and not take it to the requirements of alteration level 2, simply because we're agreeing to add the second means of egress and increase the accessibility of the building. So that's the caveat, right? Is alteration level 1 is great. And we're going to acknowledge that these reconfigurations don't take us to alteration level 2. And that's where we would like to end up with this. And we believe that the building code has that level of flexibility in it to acknowledge that we're not penalized for these extra steps. And it could be argued whether they're required or not. I think we could have a debate about that for quite some time. But at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We want a handicap accessible restroom on the main level. We want a second means of egress, and we'd love for part of this building to get sprinklered. Wouldn't that be great for everybody, including the other owners of the adjacent buildings? Thank you.
I have a question as I'm kind of making notes around an eventual motion, which is often my job, and I've been making those notes. But am I right in thinking what I'm kind of hearing that you like as an outcome? And I'm not urging the board to agree with it or anything, but part of my job is try to coalesce with it, that you would want the board to approve your appeal for the ongoing or for the forward-looking construction at level 1 with conditions, those conditions being one, that you install a handicap accessible restroom, 2, that you sprinkle the basement of the main level on the west side, the restaurant portion. And 3, you would provide a second egress as you have described it. And am I right in thinking that probably the space between you and Mr. Wester is, well, it's that second egress. What I'm hearing from him, I think, is Mr. Wester saying 2 on each level. of egress, and you're not quite saying that, you're saying the egress that we've configured should work. And fine, I mean, if that's kind of the package I'm trying to follow it, but trying to understand sort of the space between you and Mr. Webster on just the subject of egress and where they are.
I'm not sure I completely agree with the last part, because a second means of egress from what is primarily an S occupancy on the lower level, all of the restrooms down there, which are they're accessory to the A, the occupant load wouldn't drive a second means of egress from that space. So now, having said that, there actually is a second means of egress. There would be 2 staircases coming up from that lower level that could use then stair exits on the main.
If I were to like fashion this supposed motion that you would want, it would be as I described it, and on the egress, it would be, and make of the condition that I be required to do egress in the following configuration. And however you describe that configuration, that's what you want to do, right?
Yeah, that would specifically be providing second means of egress from the main level.
Yeah.
Of the rest.
Yeah. Okay, I'm following that.
Okay. But it might be worthwhile asking Dan if he agrees that that's the space between us.
I'm hearing that your proposal on the address, that's what you kind of put it down, is slightly different than his. And that's fine, and ultimately it'd be the board to decide, which, but I'm trying to sort of identify for the board what the difference is and kind of narrowing it down to just, the subtleties of the configuration of the egress.
I think what Craig is proposing, he is correct. It's very clear that you think of a high-rise building, you've got several floors coming down that go out one door. Okay, just so long as, he had said, you take into consideration how many occupants are going to be using that area to exit. There's so many fractions of an inch per person. So he is going to comply with that. There is a code path for him to get to what he's explaining. And and he talks about the exit corridor that he's going to propose. Okay, and so there is a code path for him to get there. And we have no argument with that. But mine is still the configuration of space. Because the restrooms, the stairs that were taken out that had to be reconfigured, just in themselves, it will kick you to a 2. And if he's gonna sprinkle it, the fire assembly that he speaks of, what are you gonna be, 2 hours without, 1 hour with?
It'll only be 1 hour width if the entire building is sprinkled.
Okay,
That's the
so
trick.
you're gonna have to go 2.
If we go alteration level 2, it'd have to be a 2-hour separation between the restaurant portion and the residential portion of it.
Right, and the mercantile next door. I think you can still do 1.
I think
sprinkle
one
in your
okay
space.
there, yeah.
Right,
So that's the complication with just saying, oh yeah, let's do operation level 2.
right. So
Right.
Okay.
what really gets complicated for him is the ceiling above
The restroom.
the restaurant to the resident above them. They need to be protected and they require 2-hour level of separation. And he's asking for 1 or none, basically, right?
No, 1.
1.
It would be a legit UL 1 hour separation. We can do that. But it's when you go to that 2-hour separation, you're adding 2 layers of 5/8" Type-X, and I mean, you're adding.
We're going through some plan analysis right here. And I'm reluctant to give up on the 2. He wants to stay in 1 because of that issue alone. Am I correct?
That's the most significant.
Yeah, and the most significant.
And ultimately, it's for the board.
Right.
Sure.
Right, but I just want you to know what we're giving up when we go from 1 to
What I'm trying to do is make the choices for the board clear to the board.
Isn't that on the
All this is done. Take a motion.
I would also ask, Craig,
material?
the exits that you're proposing, are they be code compliant exits with accessibility out that back, that north side?
They won't be accessible. They won't be handicap accessible from the main level. There'll be stairs.
You have all the dirt in the world to put a ramp back there.
But I can't.
Well, I can't,
It's just a thought.
yeah, I do have, I have a required accessible means of egress out the front door.
Because that's on the main, that's flat out for the most
Well,
part.
and actually that's arguable, I guess, because I don't know if we can make those existing historic doors function in that regard.
And code does not require you to.
Yeah, so,
The code does require though that somewhere there's 60% of those exits should be accessible.
yeah, which again is why alteration level 3 is like, because it changes to those requirements.
Sure.
Okay.
Let me
All right.
point something out for just a second. And I'd like to hear from both you and Dan about this. So under chapter 8, alterations level 2, right at the beginning, under the general section, there is an exception that says buildings in which the reconfiguration is exclusively the result of compliance with the accessibility requirements of section 705.2 shall be permitted to comply with chapter 7, which is the previous chapter for alterations level 1. Is that how you're, is that what you're using to get back down to level 1?
You're right on the restroom qualifies under the reconfiguration for the second means of egress does not.
Okay,
Right, it doesn't specifically articulate it that way.
okay,
Although that would be nice if they would have included that. If you want to increase the safety of your building, you're good to go. But they didn't. So, and
okay,
yeah.
all right, Mary, you had.
So how are we rectifying the work that's been completed so far that was done prior to the permit? Do you have plans? Are they inspectable? Are they going to meet code? Are they gonna be code compliant, whatever code we're deciding on here? Where do we stand with that? Where do you stand with that?
Craig and I and his team discussed that months ago, that short of digging up that entire basement, everything that they buried, there are ways that we discussed that they can expose some of it. They can pothole around the footing and foundation, shows the depth of what they've done there. They can scope the sewer lines. There are ways he can get there, but we will have to work together on that.
So you have a fair amount of confidence that with some of that work, you can look at it and
Yes.
give your. And that's part of the plan?
And am I right in thinking that absent anything else, if you have some other project and the property owner does some work without a permit, that's how you deal with it, right? I mean, you often,
we do until we can't.
Yeah, absolutely, but in a given situation, if you've got the ability to uncover things, that's, I'm not saying you must, but that's how you often achieve that.
Yeah.
But Mary's question is an important one, because in part of the school, does that get wrapped into the board's action here? Or is that something that you guys have resolved or will resolve or in the process of resolving, and you don't need board action on? And I'm not, I think it was a fair question.
I don't.
Okay.
We're in agreement on how to approach that.
Okay.
Well, the last thing I was gonna say is, I think that the real thing is making sure that the motion that we make supports the path for the code. That is, because I mean, you know, not knowing the code 100%, hearing both of them, and there always is room for how you look at something. But I think that's just to make sure that whatever motion we make, that the town is protected from that. Do you follow what I'm saying? Does that make sense to everybody? That's one thing I look at as the most important. It seems like that everybody comes to agreement on what we actually need to do.
So I think what I would caution the town, or at least inform the town, what you are asking Craig, and I, is that you need to look at accessibility. Those people, deserve an option. and you're looking at life safety, okay? We're asking for, first responders, patrons, to be able to safely get out of there and disabled to be able to use the facility, okay? I think, the fire separation, you need to understand that you're giving up with alteration one, you're giving up that extra hour between the resident above. Okay, so those three things, you're looking at accessibility, egress, and fire separation. And I would have Craig, I suppose, speak to, make a case to his fire separation. But then I don't know if we can give up on egress and accessibility. And then at that point, I want you guys to just understand what we're adopting, what we are.
I also wanted to ask how the addition of the fire sprinkler, does that offset the?
That's what we did geeky over here about that.
Okay.
When you have a fully sprinkled building, you can go from a 2-hour requirement to 1 hour separation requirement. We're not fully sprinkled because we're not sprinkling the apartments above.
And I might just add to that, however, again, I'm looking at this from a code professional perspective as well, right? And what I'm comfortable with, and because that A space, that A occupancy below will be sprinklered, when you're talking about a 1 or a 2 hour separation, the intent of that, if you look at how those are configured, is to protect the R from the A. Right, so fire start in the A is protecting the R occupancy above, but because that A space will be sprinklered, that will suppress flame spread and fire growth on that side where you, if we get there, have that 1 hour separation versus 2. So that's the only caveat I would add to Dan's explanation on that.
And how does that also affect the exit path? And I mean,
It doesn't.
the exiting, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think as far as exit, the thing we've not landed on is accessibility and the fire separation there. I think we've got the exiting count agreed on. Accessibility requires 60% of those exits, those egress points be accessible. That would require 3 of the 4. And I think the building code does protect that front door because of the historic value. You can't go tearing that up to make that inaccessible. Okay, so you've got the stairs that are coming up from downstairs that enter that area, and you've got the exit that leads to main floor that enter in that area out on the street level. So they've got that front facade, I think would be fine.
Yeah.
So I think if we could get with 2 out of the 3, out of the back, out of that north. Because he's gonna use, I don't know, what's a Lulu cost? These days, that's a shot in the dark, but.
Yeah, probably $40,000, but yeah, as much. The second means of egress exiting out through that lower level is about as far as we can go from a practical perspective, I think. Anything else is going to require additional reconfiguration of the space adjacent and get us, I think, into a larger can of worms rather than a smaller can of worms from that would be down as perspective. So.
Right.
One more.
And-
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, Deanne?
We have the responsibility to make sure this is safe for our citizens. And now is the time to do it, not to piddle around saying, well, what level is this? If it needs done, it needs done. And as much as I'm gung-ho historical, keep it pristine, yada, yada. I think now is the time to have the adequate exits, to have adequate accessibility for handicap, to have the restroom on the main floor, which has never been there before. So it's not just a refurbish, it's a change. I used to feel really claustrophobic going down those stairs to use the bathroom. And just knowing that there's an easy, open, wide, easy to get at exit also besides those stairs. I mean, what happened, hypothetical, big truck carrying gasoline is coming down Rose Street from Gwinnett and bounces around and goes out of control and crashes into the front of the building. So that whole side is not usable and quite possibly a fire hazard. I want to know I've got an easy out on the north side. Or if I can exit into Ophelia's and go out that way, go out east, it doesn't matter, but there needs to be better exit access. Anyway, and we are responsible for doing this right now.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Well, what steps guys together in an agreement? I guess that is what, and I guess that three doors.
Keep it simple first, Jerry.
Yeah. I think there probably are three doors one. I'm willing to motions around sort of a level 1 approach and a level 2, because that will change the fire separation. And that's clearly sort of a level 1 would be the Craig's request. Level 2 would be Craig's request as modified by what Dan has articulated to you on the issues of concern to him. And those are the two kind of doors, even though they're getting close, they're not in complete agreement. And I hear, and I could be wrong about this, but I hear that they're not going to get all the way together because Craig's saying that's as far as I can go on these exits. And I'm not trying to make him go any further. And Dan is saying, I'm drawing a line myself on that, and fair enough. Sometimes you pick one door or the other, you just do. You can't force people to always agree because you can't force them to do that. But that is door 3, which would be, you can say, okay, move to continue this, ask Mr. Webster and Mr. Abrahamson to, talk more and come back with any solution they have. If they have no solution, then you still have doors 1 and 2, and you pick. That's how I am looking at it, and I'm happy to. If you're going to continue, then that's great. I won't wordsmith, but I've got enough, I think, to articulate the doors 1 and 2. 3 is easy. Continue it and ask them if there's. And I suppose you could ask them if there's any chance that there's going to be a positive outcome or a compromise outcome between the 2 of them. If not, we're all grown-ups and we have full lives, and at some point you don't make people do, anything that's not going to be that helpful to them, and you pick a door, and I can help you write those.
So, has the board any more final questions for either the building official or the appellant?
I guess I do for Craig. So you've made preliminary drawings or whatever of this egress and how that'll work? Yeah.
Lots of notes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and it works.
And the part that's the hardest is accessible, access from the lowest level, the basement level, or, a ramp or something, is that, I guess not over these stairs. So, if the needs to be good from the lower level, could be made accessible. We can actually ramp, because the grade on the north side of the building is, was it 6 feet lower than the front side of the building? And so and it's actually a ramp now. I haven't checked the rise and run to see what the slope is. That can be made accessible. What can't be made accessible are the stairs leading from the main level down to it, because that's the route that second needs to be addressable. Right, and the stairs are obviously not accessible components around need to be addressed. So, okay, what was the lose thing you were talking about?
Well, it's essentially a lip.
I didn't want to go there, John.
Well, it's determined.
Door number 5.
It gets you out, a lot of different issues.
Yeah.
I would welcome you all to go over to the historic building in Idaho Springs, Pickaxe Pizza. They put their accessible entrance in the back, and then they put a Lulu inside so people could enjoy any part of the space. And basically, you've seen them in libraries. It's a metal box, you go in your wheelchair in it. It's a very simple.
Isn't that kind of like an elevator? You don't use the elevator when there's a fire?
It's just,
It's not fully enclosed,
no, it's just,
so. Fiddler's
you're on
Green-
display.
Fiddler's Green has them,
yeah.
yeah,
And they go up, could go up just a part of a floor or whatever.
right.
And they're not a favorite for people to use them, but it's, I call it the handicapped attorneys. They're gonna roll in here and they're gonna say, I couldn't access this level, or couldn't access that. We're gonna get that call, just as long as you know that. And we're going to have to deal with that. And sometimes it can just go away because they're just seeking money. And I'm just trying to speak in as common sense as I can for Craig's behalf, is that we have a ton of historic buildings in Colorado. I've got a bunch of them under my purview, and we get those calls all the time, and they're not really seeking anything other than monetary, and they go away pretty quick. Jerry and I dealt with it in other towns together.
Last question for you, Dan. I get your passion for safety. Code wise, is what Craig's saying, does that fit code? Does it fit it enough to satisfy what we're trying to do?
Well, like I said, it depends, I just want the town to know what we're leaving on the table. If we leave accessibility, fire separation in, Craig's argument, the ceiling did its job. That old laughing plaster ceiling, it contained that fire, and that was a nasty fire.
Because then it's a liability issue too, as long as our decision is based off of that, if something happens like that again.
Right.
Also to our decision helps
Right.
move forward with that liability, and they deal with that too.
Is that rant you're speaking
But
of?
that's the risk that we have with the historic buildings too, is if they're not necessarily all gonna be accessible. The RAM was there for, yeah, so.
But then again, I don't want to turn the Constitution into a power vote, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, and I would also just add, in our discussions, we felt like the baseline should be life and health and safety. And that's why they all came to an agreement, which I didn't want to budge on, of having a sprinkler system and another means of egress. And so I think because of those, I'm comfortable. And we both came to the middle ground. So I think that, yeah, the firewall is a concern. However, there's gonna be sprinkler systems. And I think that was my way of feeling way better for the liability of this than not doing that.
There's huge improvements.
Yeah,
that are
and it's a
being
huge
made.
improvement. So anyways, that was my agreement with these guys coming together and they did it. So that was huge win.
Hey Jared, tell us what you got.
So wait,
Oh,
before, if there are no more questions from the board.
I just want to say that I support Dan's stance more than Craig's, because again, now is the time to do these things. If we can't put a second door on the outside on the north side, there's no way we can put a little elevator lift thing there. Basically, we need more egresses, we need accessibility, and I'm nervous about the fire separation, but can see how the sprinklers will do something. However, if they fail, then we don't have much of anything.
Okay, so what I was asking was any more questions, final questions by the board? So that if there aren't any more, I would close the public hearing and then we could have further deliberation. Is that?
Before you do that, make sure on the option that articulates where Dan's coming from.
Okay.
As soon as he's done with his email, I need to know if with characterizing your option in terms of the the fire safety and accessibility being a level 2 characterization?
Yes.
Or, okay, all right, that's all I needed. Thank you.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing. It is 8:16 PM. And deliberation, any further deliberation that's needed from the board? Okay. All right. So if you could articulate the.
Sure, some choices, and you certainly deliberate the choices, you know, just because there's emotion, doesn't mean you can't keep talking about it. It seems to me that you know what door 3 is, which is move to ask these people to keep talking. So there's that. And what I'm thinking of articulating is that sort of motion A and motion B, for lack of a better way of saying it. Motion A could be to approve the appeal with the alterations proposed at level 1 with following conditions. That there be a handicap accessible restroom built, that the restaurant space, which is both the main floor and the basement, if they're all restaurants, be sprinkled, that there be additional egress as described by Craig, with the width, which is width of the exit and the egress, consistent with the occupant load, which I found helpful. The number of people equals how wide it is, that was new to me, so great. So with that egress being consistent with the occupant load, that the egress, to the extent it's through an exit corridor, not be through storage. The impact of this option would be that you would have a 1 hour protection for the space above. I'm not a building official, so I've kind of murdered some language, but I'm doing my best. Yeah, well, thank you very much. That is, call it door A. Door B would be to approve the appeal, because there's still an appeal. It's not a level 3. Greg doesn't want that, so approve the appeal at level 2 with the following conditions: handicap restroom, sprinkle the restaurant. But the egress and the sprinkling as a result of level 2 would mean that you'd be sprinkling the space above. No, you would not. You'd be building a 2-hour basically ceiling between the restaurant and the space above, which comes at the cost of this was described, with the egress from the space being, while in those locations, being accessible, which leads you to the accessible egress from the main level, either being out some newly constructed ramp or out in front. And there's reasons why that's articulated is not good, but that would be sort of the level 2 motion. The first one would be the level 1 motion. So those are motions you can make. You can say the level 2 motion, the level 1 motion. Then I'll make sure I can write it up, and Jan and I will make sure it's in that.
Just for clarity, did you mention an accessible bathroom on the main level?
I did, in both cases.
And can somebody clarify with the sprinkler system, is that planned for the main level and the lower level?
Yeah.
Of the work area, yes.
Okay. So if I'm down there dining downstairs in the Rathskeller,
The rest of it would not be sprinkled. That's not part of the work area.
so what's the work area
The
downstairs?
work area downstairs is storage, restrooms, and an egress corridor.
Okay,
What I thought we spoke of, the restaurant space down below, which would encompass the old ramp.
The ramp, that's the rest killer that I think you're referring to.
Yeah.
I don't recall saying, yes, we'll sprinkler that as well.
I thought that was.
Because that space is not being worked on.
It's not part of the work area. Our proposal is to address the sprinkler in the work area. Now, having said that, the sprinkler system will be designed in size such that it can be expanded outside of the work area to encompass other parts of the building at a later date. But that's not proposed at this time.
Now.
the proposal at this time is to sprinkler the work area itself.
And on the main level. the work area-
Now,
Hang on, Dean, just
Hang on.
1 second.
On the main area, the work area, on the main level, the work area is the whole restaurant.
Correct.
Correct. All right,
Yeah, I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear.
Okay,
okay. The whole-
okay, and what were you saying, Deanne?
it needs to be done now. We need to maximize our safety, not piecemeal it.
So,
Got the level 1 motion and the level 2 motion, and door number 3 would be continue the sucker for a couple weeks.
Be like ordinance 5.
What?
I said it could be like ordinance 5, that we continued and continued and continued.
Wow.
I like
So-
I like the upgrades. I went in the old Ram. Historical buildings are inherently more dangerous. And I like the idea of having even the workspace sprinkled, the accessibility improved, the bathroom at the main level. To me, it already went beyond repairs and made it a more safe building.
But that's a level 1 that you're, or
Yes.
plan. Proposition A.
Hey,
Yeah, if you're characterizing the motion, you could say, move the level 1 motion, move the level 2 motion, as described, or move to continue. That's in terms of putting it in the actual motion language, that would work.
So.
I'd like to see 2 or continue.
My quick question is, with the level 1 motion, we move forward with that. Then Dan, it puts you, our motion then puts you in a situation to kind of do what Craig is saying that he's gonna do, correct? Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question.
It's the code guy, correct?
You don't
Under
want-
that interpretation?
You don't want that motion passing and Dan saying as the building official,
Yeah.
okay, no, I'm not gonna approve the ongoing permits for that work because I don't agree.
Well, I think that's what this conversation here is that the town is involved in approving that.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean. It's basically, you're right. It's, I'm here to voice that piece of it. What you guys decide on and approve, it's gonna rest with the town.
And this path can get us by code to where it needs to be.
One? That's
Yeah,
already,
level 1. And then but voicing your concerns, correct?
right, I did not know we've given up the sprinkler system
Or down below.
down below in the dining area. I thought that was, I hate to,
But it's gonna be expandable.
but I think if you're gonna do it, you need to do it.
Do it now.
It's being configured so that it could be extended.
What's your risk? That right?
Wait, we have something here.
just a minute, Deanne. Yes.
I just conferred with Mark and with the building owners, and if that's a point that gets us closer to Dan being comfortable with this, which we want, that's in our best interest, then adding sprinkling of the vascular portion to the scope of work is acceptable to the owner and to the owner. So
And just know that it's not just my company, it's the town.
I understand.
Yes.
Yes, I understand. But that's an additional accommodation that I think is that these guys have indicated they're willing to make, and I find useful.
That's helpful, and for the board's action, you can assume that that's part of the level of motion, if that is the motion that's made.
I make a motion to approve at level 1. The
approve the appeal at level 1 Elm Drive.
Yes. So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the appeal at level 1. Deanne, did you have something further to say?
Who seconded? And we should do it now because it's easier to just do it right than wish we had.
So.
Who seconded?
Rock.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Motion passed though. So. Oh, I'm gonna close that. Did I? No, I did. I did.
Yeah, you did. You did.
Hey, awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys for your patience. It was.
It was fun.
It was a lot.
Thanks, guys.
I truly do appreciate it.
So when's the grand opening? Really?
Thank you for coming to first.
Yeah, that's too much.
Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
That's why we did it. But I don't like it.
You good with that?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Since you guys put it out, we'll continue with that meeting.
Thank you.
What's
that? Oh, yeah.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
All right.
I'll take the next motion if we're ready to move on.
Moving on. So next item we have is the Juneteenth town holiday.
All right, this should only take me about 45 minutes to explain that. How about this?
Do the short version.
How about this? This will be the shortest version ever. You've read this, my report.
We have.
Does anyone have any questions about it? Okay, good. I move to approve Juneteenth, the 19th of June is an official holiday. The town of Georgetown will add to the Georgetown holiday schedule.
What exactly does it mean to make it an official holiday for the town?
Means the town hall is closed and staff has the day off.
Yeah, baby, it gets paid, right?
Yeah.
It's a paid holiday.
Because it took Texas 2 years to enact the paper.
So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
I'll be opposed.
Okay. Motion passed. Next, we have the Gateway Visitor Center negotiations with town attorney.
You want me to take the turn first? Okay, so, I did give you a memo just to describe what this is. In short, is I have talked to, like you tasked me to talk to Paul Boat. I took the information, then Jerry and I talked about what would it take to accomplish this in a generic sense, amount of hours, what that scope would kind of look like. It really came down to, probably about 10 hours max, with not to exceed $2,000. So, I've not, Paul has reached out to Jerry to discuss, however, we wanted to go through this first. And then once you guys make a decision, then we can task Jerry to meet with Paul.
Okay,
That's it.
I
Any
move
questions?
Go for it.
I move to approve allowing the town attorney to negotiate with the town of Georgetown's contract with CDOT to increase funding for the visitor center not to exceed 10 hours with $2,000.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Everybody understands the motion? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful,
Thanks, Jerry.
thank you.
Thanks, Barry.
So do you need just direction then to, or do you need a full motion?
No, I think that'll work, what apparently is good in the case is that, while Cindy Dean told me, hey, there's this problem, they're not gonna let the gift shop keep her back on one part of it. This is, CDOT, and Paul apparently heard something else, which was a surprise to me at the last meeting. We hope and believe that what Paul heard was what to take to the bank, so that's great news. Which means that if he doesn't want to just re-up this, it's wonderful, we can write it up. And that will be hopefully not going easy enough, I'll take their prior agreement or whatever agreement they want to tender. The only issue will be how much money will CDOT want to cough up. They'll say what they're gonna say. And we'll bring that to you, and it may be that the town can push back and CDOT a little bit, or maybe not, and I don't have a good handle on that. But that's just that's the number, which, you know, is either gonna be a number and get increased or not. But it's not all the language of the agreement, which I'm sure is something CDOT is gonna be cool with, so I'm happy to apply spec it and get a number from them and bring it to you. Cool. So that's what I'll do.
Okay, very good. All right, staff items, the town administrators report and task list updates.
Okay, so I did not submit a task list update because I didn't have time. This week was, as you see, hearings, preparing for that took a lot of my time. But I will highlight just tomorrow, Excel public meeting. If you have time, please show up. This is really important. This is where Excel is doing one of their required FERC meetings. And so Excel is combining these meetings into one. And they're gonna communicate what their intentions are as far as decommissioning the 4 bay and the Pinstock and the Energy Museum and pump station. So their plan is to remove completely decommission that and the removal of those. There are options, however, they've not communicated their options, but this is to hear from the town and the public of their questions and concerns. And so the format that they're doing is really, they're gonna announce, and then they're gonna have people go to stations, not to be heard from the public, but to be heard at the station of what their questions are. And so here is, just to be aware, I think that you need to be there. So if you have time and have opportunity, please go.
Wait, can you just tell me the time?
Oh, sure. The times tomorrow will be from 10 a.m. to 11:30 is their presentation, and then the public input between 12:30 and 2. And then if you want to do a site visit from 2:15 to 3:45. And then there will be a second session in the evening from 5 to 6:30, their presentation. And then 6:45 to 7:45 public input, no site visits in the evening.
Are they, as part of the site visit, the Energy Museum, the power plant too, and then up to the?
I can't confirm that. I don't know.
You can't confirm or deny?
I cannot confirm that. So I'm sure it's spelled out in their memo. I can send that to you if you guys want that. It's a long, lengthy memo of what they're doing, but I don't know.
Okay.
I would assume probably here, they're gonna, at least, because that's not far in proximity. Unless people want to take a trip, but there's a lot of people, so I would assume coming over here.
So is the morning and evening, is it basically the same meeting, just a different time? So 10 to 11:30 is far and you know, here perfect, I can do in the morning.
Yeah, they should be the same presentation.
Can I ask,
Absolutely.
is this something, if there are several of us attending, has it been noticed
Public
properly?
notice.
Sorry, Bill, Dennis.
Is it required by?
If there's 3 or 4, and whichever is less, it's an open meeting. You don't have to have posted it or published it unless you intend that there, unless there may be a quorum, or you intend to take action. Would there be 4 of you potentially?
At any one given
Possible.
time?
In that case, it's, when is this? Sorry, it's tomorrow.
Yeah, 2 sessions.
Yeah, it's fine to post it. And specifically indicate that 1 or more board members may be there, but no, it's not a formal meeting of the board and no action, no formal action will be taken. And that protection.
Okay.
And where's that, where is actually the meeting?
Oh, good question.
I think it knows.
Heritage Center, the old school.
Oh, the old schoolhouse,
Yeah.
okay, perfect.
Okay.
Did you ask my neighbor who works for Excel, usually to show up? Someone asked him, and he's very knowledgeable about pen stock.
Yeah, he came last today.
Okay.
He knocked on my door and said, I want to hear stuff.
I talked to him because he's much more knowledgeable about all that than I am, and he's willing to speak up.
So I have sent formal letters to Excel and to FERC that I do not agree to the format of this meeting. So that has been, that is communicated already. So, I feel like that they should at least let the public, share their concerns in the public and not be forced to a station where people can't hear these concerns. So if you said something, I want to hear that. I want to know if that's a concern that I should share. So they believe in the opposite. They believe that they have a better chance to hearing you, having somebody look at you and write down what your concerns are than it is. And if they feel like it's too divisive and it covers nothing. So that was their feedback to me. I've also talked to their dam engineer who communicated, this is something for your knowledge, communicated that the reservoir is at full capacity at the forebay. And what normally would have happened is they would have kicked on their second pump to draw more water out of that. So the forebay dam normally runs on 1 pump year round, but in spring runoff, they put 2 on to draw water out. So it's not too much pressure on the dam, but since that is out, he's letting us know that it's at high risk now. And there's no way to release more water. And so that's something that they have been aware of for several years. However, their option was to do nothing, but to draw the water down. And by drawing water down, it created a less hazard situation. But in this situation, there's no way to draw the water out because they never fixed the pump. I was also told that the reason why they didn't fix the pump is that the supply chains are down and it could take over a year to fix. And then I reminded him, it's been a year. You could have ordered it and had it installed. And so that was, they did not have a comment. It was, but.
I've also learned just today that the emergency alert system for if there is a flood imminent is not fully set up, and it should have been before this. There are pieces missing that Excel needs to take care of. I just learned that from John Kyler today.
But that's something that would be important to tell them at that meeting tomorrow.
Yeah.
So what is the action of the town? How do you guys deal with this, or us as board members? How do we get them to fix this? This is an issue, and it's gonna become a bigger issue if something would happen.
Well, that's why they have chose to the decommissioning route. They would prefer to remove all of it, put it back in its natural state, and put in the millions of dollars to do that the right way, because it would not be approved unless it was agreed upon by all parties of how that's going to be done. And that's their preferred method. There will be options that they'll consider. However, there's nothing on the table saying they're going to do it. So they're considering all options, but that's the preferred method right now. Instead of keeping the existing structure, is to take it out.
But it seems like right now they're responsible for the existing structure, correct, that's broken.
Yeah.
That they didn't well really fix or whatever that is.
That's kind of, they have communicated their intentions with FERC to remove this. And because it's at a higher hazard, FERC is willing to walk down the regulation steps to do that. And that's kind of where we're at.
Gotcha, but it seemed like Excel put themselves in that situation, correct?
Correct. Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
It's demolition by neglect.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been in their ownership. They've known about this. They could have put the means into fixing and resolving this. However, I was told that the material that the dam is made of, it's 100 years ago. And so that material began to wear out.
Some was organics and stuff like that, so
And so the only really way is to tear it out and rebuild it to strengthen that. But at this point, the dam is compromised on the left abutment side. And by doing nothing, by lowering the water, it does take some of the pressure off of that. However, when it goes back full, it's only exasperating the situation. So they don't know how long this will last. They just know that because they've done nothing to help it, it's continued the deterioration of it and rapidly. And now that there's no means to draw the water off, it's actually exacerbated even more.
Sounds like level 1 of IUDC, right?
well,
But that,
Mr. Billingsley said that it unleashed a 12-foot wall of water down
yeah.
into Georgetown.
One other last thing I'll just mention to you. We are still waiting on the EPA to give guidelines in order to move the millings down to the property that's near Argentine and Alvarado. And so, I don't suspect that it's gonna be complicated. After talking to some other contractors, there's a real easy means to keep some kind of, I don't know what you call it, but like a little fence that you put up. What is it called?
Almost hay bale.
Something like that. So it's.
Or debris,
Yeah, so some kind of thing like that is what would be required. I just want it to be, I want to be told by the EPA so that when we present this special use permit request, we've addressed it.
So I'm gonna miss the tar pits.
That's all I have.
Okay. I wanted to mention.
I have a couple questions for Rick. First is what is it, bathymetric thing, the study that's going to be done on the lake that relates to silt? Do you have any report on that? And then after that, come back to me?
Yes, absolutely. So they're actually doing the study right now.
Yeah.
So they have a small little motorboat that we did approve so that they can go in there. They have a permit to allow that. But they're doing that study. It should last 2 to 3 days at the max. And so they're gonna take numbers and readings of how much water is being stored in that. And then that will be able to tell us when we do this again in the future, how much sediments come in, because it will actually reduce the amount of water that can hold. So that's ongoing right now. Lagoon side, correct.
Okay, and then the next thing is, how can Excel tear stuff down? If you own a house in Georgetown, especially in Ward 1, you can't tear it down without DRC and a whole bunch of other assessments and the like. How can they destroy one of our historic buildings? It happens to be a dam, and it happened to have been a penstock, but they were historic, and they're part of the reason we qualified for the historic landmark district. How can they do this? It seems like we should have a say and can say no, and that they, like, for example, because the dam's 100 years old and discombobulating itself, why not build essentially the same dam, like another 20 yards upstream, so that the original dam's there, but the new one takes the weight off of it? It seems like there are all kinds of, and also in part of your paperwork, you're talking about demolition by neglect on 2 buildings. How can that happen? Because they're historic buildings. Why not? Is there a way for the town to, I don't want to say eminent domain, but claim them so that one of the historic societies can take them over and do something with them? I thought there was stuff on the books that said we can't destroy historic buildings or buildings that are old.
Well, Deanne, I can only answer that in part, and I'd have to defer to Jerry, since he's really the code expert, legal for us. I did mention that question to FERC, of how can you remove a contributing structure in a national landmark district? That was one of the questions I asked, and they said, it is possible, it's not impossible, because they're going through the regulation process to decommission this. And so there's a lot of steps that they have to go through, and they would have to submit documentation to prove their point for that. And so it is possible. I don't know all of the details of how to answer that, but I was assured that it is possible. So it goes into a little bit more because there's a dam side, the penstock side, and then the museum pump house side. I think they're all kind of left individually and to make these decisions on these things, because it may be an easy decision to remove the dam. However, the penstock is another question, because Rutherford Trail and some others are dependent upon that as a walking area, and to remove that would significantly compromise and change historically the trail and the road bed that it sits on. So I think that each one of these will be taken separately, and even this, I think Excel is willing, that one of the options that they have considered is, instead of removal, we would gladly like to work at a deal where we can hand it off to somebody else to take responsibility and liability. Yeah, so I don't think the Excel is gonna come in here with a bulldozer saying we're gonna do this. There's regulations that still they have to go through. Jerry, is any other guy?
This could make us lose our National Historic Landmark District status, because it's a very large and noticeable historic item that's being ruined.
Well, the dam and penstock aren't in town. And the town doesn't have demolition by neglect ordinance. The town simply doesn't have power to impose a permit condition on the dam and penstock. The building across the street is in town, and we have a demolition by neglect provision and another building codes. But we don't have the ordinance power to reach outside of town to tell them this. They are following the regulatory process that applies to these kinds of facilities, which is FERC. And that's not easy for them, as Rick described. So we continue watching, we show open houses, we send in comments, and those have an effect on them. It won't result in them not doing it at all, but I don't think that's a result that we would get under any condition.
If I'm not mistaken, didn't DRC make like 1908, the border, anything before 1908 was historic, anything after 1908 was
In town. Yeah.
Okay.
Down in penstock, we have to remember, they're not in town. Different.
Oh, no, I'm saying, it's just saying.
Yeah.
But the real designation of what is historic and what is not has been delineated.
Yes, that's true.
But that's even more complicated than that. You have national landmark contribute, and then you have historic preservation. So you can have 50-year-old buildings be considered historic preserve, but our landmark district has a date that's attached to it. Yeah.
Well, the real issue with the dam is, I mean, obviously we want to keep the town safe.
Yeah.
So really, whatever is necessary with that is like we just talked about with Lucius, you know, making it safe by code, we want the dam to be safe. So whatever we got to do to do that, or whatever process, I think is the most important.
Up to removing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it's gonna cause a wall of water to come down because of delaying action, that's not safe.
Yeah.
Did you want to address her second part of that question, which was it was out of the,
It's close to the end. It's like, what is it? Number 5 on the back page of that list.
Well, demolition by neglect only applies within the boundaries of the town. The dam and the penstock aren't.
Yeah, but these are 2 houses in the town.
Oh, so we're not talking about Excel anymore, right?
no,
Oh.
the second part of her question is about.
We've sent letters, there's a process under that code section that starts with a letter to the property owner saying, hello, we have this ordinance. We're aware of the deterioration of the structure. Please understand that you need to address it. We don't snap our fingers and it happens all at once, there's a process. And we start with a letter, and that's apparently what Rick has sent. So we're following the process that this board approved and plugged into the code.
And I will add, Kofsky has responded back through email and said that he will be back from South Africa to Georgetown, late, probably June, July, late July maybe is what he said. But he is intended to shore up some of these things that we mentioned on the list. Has all intents and purposes to fix the entire structure. He has two structures, the yellow house that's right beside it. To the right side, I guess, is that south side?
Yes.
Okay, I'm still trying to get familiar with the way you guys talk here. In Georgia, no one said that. No one says south, no one talks like you all. So, but anyways, he is in the process of restoring the yellow house to the south. It is almost finished. He's put in over $300,000 is what he told me. Next is to fix that building. So that's, as far as the other one has not responded back to me yet. But I did see them moving more stuff into, that's the Georgetown Museum. That's on.
Corner of 7th and House, the northeast corner.
Yep.
Over there.
All right, anything else? So I just wanted to bring a couple of things to our attention. So this weekend, lots happening. More details will follow. I haven't heard from Jess yet on timings of some of the component events, but lots happening.
She's trying to get a hold of you for Monday.
Well, and I was trying to get a hold of her for breakfast with Mayor Parker for Friday, so I did send her a reply today, so, yeah. Well, should be a fun weekend. And then just a reminder that our cleanup day is scheduled for the 10th of June, which is a Saturday, so.
And the garage, putting together the garage sale, the all-town garage sale on June 3rd.
Okay.
But back to the 10th for cleanup day, has anyone reached out to Jeremy Jones? And
I
to get the chipper?
and I sent an email to Parks and Rec. Yes,
And chipper?
He said it could be available. So Rob has contact information, Beth Luther has contact information.
Way to go, Rob.
I have full confidence that they will make things happen.
This reminded me of that scene in Fargo. Just want to say that once. Thank you.
Good thing I asked them.
Anything else?
I move to adjourn.
I second.
Okay, it is 8:54. All in favor, say aye.
Bye.
Any opposed?